Welcome to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. I am very excited to welcome someone new to the Clay and Buck podcast family, and that is David Rutherford. He is a former Navy SEAL. He's a CIA contractor and world championship performance coach, and he is now the new host of the David Rutherford Show. David, thank you so much for joining me.
Tudor, it is an honor and a privilege to be with you. When I first got asked by Buck to come and join the network, the first thing I'm doing is immediately going, oh man, I got to be side by side next to Tudor Dixon. I was like, man, I better bring my A game. So it is a real privilege and I just can't thank you enough for having me on.
Well, you're not new to this stuff. I mean, you've done a lot of speaking. You're a motivational speaker. You are a teacher. You have your own online academy, right?
Mm-hmm. The Frog Logic Institute. Yeah.
So I was reading a little bit about that, and I find it kind of fascinating because I read that you talked about why you joined the SEALs, and it was really that you were kind of like getting into trouble. You had this sort of self epiphany, which I think is impressive too, which was, I'm really good on a team. I need like the most skilled team in the world. I mean, being good on a team is not like, I must become a Navy SEAL. That's what you chose. And now you're kind of passing that on to other people, which I love.
Yeah. Thank you. Having those God moments, and at my age, I didn't know that's what was taking place. And through that divine intervention, it was like, well, what are the things that I know I need? And I always knew I needed a team. And so I was like, all right, well, what's the toughest team in the world to go and be a part of? And, it's the Navy SEALs. And so thank God there wasn't as much information as there is today. Like, what events you got to go through and have to pass, and there's a million books and all that stuff. So if there'd been anything like that, I probably wouldn't have done it. I would have been too afraid. But
well, do you think that is why people aren't joining now? I mean, you make I never thought about that before, but before we got on, you were saying how people who have served are not like super motivated to have their kids do it. Maybe they know too much, but now your kids can also research. Do you think that there's too much information out there?
That's a really awesome question. No, because I believe that information is power, right? Information is what enables us to make the most focused decision, the most focused, well thought out decisions when we take those big risks in our lives. And so the more information, the better. I think the problem that we've been having in the military has nothing to do with that much information. It has to do with the generation that comes before is typically the group that inspires the following generations beneath them, right? I just was with a guy who drove me to the airport yesterday when I was leaving New Jersey, where I was giving a couple speeches, and his whole dream was to serve in the military because his dad was a Vietnam vet. His grandfather had served in World War II. And then his dad had said, he was also a 30-year New Jersey state trooper. He said, here's what I want you to do. Try the police force first. And then if you don't like that, then go into the military. And so I think it's like it's correlated to this legacy or this idea to live up to something that's bigger than yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I know me, and I know many, many, many of my GWAT brothers and sisters that are so dejected by the morale and how it's the attack on the morale that we've seen taking place over the last, 8-9 years. That's why if you were to ask,
is that because of all these policies that went into effect that was like, you have to be, it just kind of changed. There were different requirements for women than men. There were the loosening of the rules of, what you could wear, what you could do. Was it because people started to feel like you weren't as much of a team? What do you think the real turning point there was?
I think you're absolutely right. The thing that holds the U.S. military or any organization that's built around those concepts, the thing that holds those people together is meritocracy. It's the recognition that if I give the best effort amongst my peers who are all giving a similar effort or a focus, the person who exemplifies the best of the best rises, gets rank, and moves forward. And that seemed to be reduced dramatically through whether it was the DEI policies or, I mean, the COVID shot, like we're going to kick out 6,000 plus people because they won't take something that they don't believe they need. I think it's the endless wars. And for me and my friends, where it was is when you finally reach that point where you understand that we went to Iraq based on a lie, right? And then the other one for me that just destroyed me was how we pulled out of Afghanistan. I mean, leaving, all of the people that helped us in that 20-year fight, just leaving them to get slaughtered by the Taliban, leaving $80+ billion worth of equipment that's now being used to train pretty much every terrorist organization in the world in Afghanistan. And then to know how we pulled out doing that. And now we're funding the Taliban $40 million a week. I mean, why would I ever want to I have 4 beautiful daughters, and my oldest is getting ready to go. Why would I ever look at her and say, you know what? I want you to go serve your country because what they're going to tell you is the truth. I mean, that's a problem, I think.
Well, you mentioned something I don't think a lot of people think about or maybe don't even know. You talked about the people that helped you that were left behind. So I think that there are folks who look at Afghanistan and they think, well, we brought all of our people home, and I've had some conversations with folks who spent time over there, who served over there. And they're like, look, there's all of these interpreters, there's all of these people who helped us, and their lives are in grave danger because they helped us. And the agreement was, you help us, we take care of you. And we didn't take care of them. Is that what you're talking about?
100%. I have several close friends that were part of the organizations that were doing civilian paid flights overseas, launching out of Uzbekistan, going in. Jared Hudson, the Pineapple Express crew, right? That they were going in and they were leaving that wire, going out and retrieving thousands of our closest allies, our interpreters, our intelligence people that we trained who fought alongside of us. And what you have to understand is, we go over, we do a deployment, 90 days, 6 months, year deployment. We come home, we go through a training cycle and go back. Those people never are out of the fight. Every single day, they're fighting for their lives. And then the other component that you have to recognize is that, Afghanistan is built on a real classic culture of antiquity, right? Eye for eye, tribalism. And so if you're willing to die for me, I'll die for you. So the number one thing that affects them is betrayal. And so we essentially betrayed tens of thousands of people and left them to the very organization we said we were going in to eradicate, and we put them back into power. That's the type of morale destroying policy that will always impede recruiting.
Yeah, it's almost a transactional society where if I'm going to be here, you need to be committed to something too.
That's right.
It's interesting. So Pete Hegseth, he takes over. He's the top guy, and everybody was very excited about this because they're like, this is a war fighter. He's going in. He's now the Secretary of Defense. He's going to take care of our troops. It's just going to be a totally different feel. And we've seen an increase in people joining the Army, but there have been these situations. We talked earlier about the reporter being on the phone call or on the signal chat. And you see they're starting to get rid of people. This Dan Caldwell was let go. You brought up something interesting that I don't think a lot of people would think of. I mean, regardless of what happens, people think you're doging everything. You're going into these agencies. You're getting rid of these career politicians or career bureaucrats. You're getting rid of a lot of the people that are against the swamp, right? We've heard it for years where Donald Trump is going to drain the swamp. But the swamp is very deep. And the swamp, you said something earlier about there's not that many people that lie to get what they want in Washington, jokingly. And I mean, that's true. And you don't know who to trust. It's become kind of a very sick society, the bureaucracy of DC. So what do you think Secretary Hegseth is up against?
Oh, I mean, it's a war It's an enigma wrapped in a Pandora's box, or whatever that great saying was from the famous movie JFK. Right? It's like an octopus. It has infinite number of tentacles that are woven in at all these different places. My favorite description is always given by a gentleman named Mike Benz, who exposed the censorship industrial complex. Love that guy. It's just a brilliant guy. And so what do? You need to revitalize the American public, the base that got you overwhelmingly in office. So you pick a face that they can relate to, someone who is on the ground, who fought the war. He's got the tats. He's a part of the warrior culture. You bring him in, and what many people don't realize is how short of amount of time that you have to assemble the people that are going to help you walk into that building. And the Pentagon is no joke. I mean, at $1 trillion budget this year, you got to figure how deeply those people are entrenched in a mindset that's been established since post-World War II.
And just to step in for a second, when you say that, what you're talking about is, Donald Trump gets elected in November. He is then picking cabinet secretaries into January and sometimes beyond. And so he's getting into office. They're immediately going into hearings. They're prepping for hearings. They're trying to get prepared at the same time. And that is brutal, the prep for those hearings. So at the same time as you're prepping for hearings, you have to say, okay, I'm going to say that I'm getting confirmed. So I have to start interviewing staff and figuring out who's who. And that is all just a very complicated, rushed, quick situation where some snakes could come slither through the process.
There's no, what is it? The famous quote is absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? And people in DC, they're always trying to move up that ladder. So think of all the people that have been working the system in however you want to describe it, either nefarious or genuine. Most of these people actually believe what they believe in, and they think they're doing great work. But all of those people, all the 5-star or 4 stars, all the people that were writing policy at all these different think tanks, all the people that were a part of the defense and military industrial complex and all the defense industry, all the people in the Senate or the Congress that thought they had a shot at being the Secretary of Defense, and now all of a sudden he picks this kid, this whatever, how people, the disgusting way they describe it. And I'll tell you, some of my closest friends are really close with Pete, and they all say the same thing, that he is a genuine, brilliant guy, right? This whole garbage that he's just some newscaster, it's ridiculous, right? He's a war fighter. And so they bring him in. Now, all of those people are upset. And so what is the way that and remember, these people are the world's greatest operators, right? Not only the intelligence industry, but the DOD. What do? What's their whole job? Is to tear down the enemy. And so if you get slated as the enemy, stand by. They're going to come at you every which way, but from Sunday. And so, my issue now is I love it. I love he's out there shaking hands and lifting troops up and revitalizing the war fighter. But listen, if you hear this, Sean, my good buddy who used to be in the network with Clay and Buck, Sean Parnell, I love you, Sean. God bless you, man. I'm so proud of you. But if you hear this, or Pete, this gets to you, get in the building. Stay in the building, because that's where things will change. When you understand how that building works, how the bureaucracy works, and you can attack the rot there, that's what needs to take place.
We've got more with David Rutherford coming up next. First, let me tell you about my partners at IFCJ. Israel is still under attack. Missile fire has resumed from Israel's enemies, terrorists who seek utter death and destruction. And here in America, let's face it, we can't imagine what it's like to live in constant fear like this. But for the people of Israel, it's very real. Every single day, it's very real. Please join me and show the people of Israel you'll help protect them in this time of attack and uncertainty. And one of the best ways to do this is by giving to the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Your gift today will help provide security essentials like bomb shelters, flak jackets, and bulletproof vests, armored security vehicles, ambulances, and so much more. There is no better time to give than right now during the Passover holiday, when we celebrate Israel's historic deliverance and birth as a nation. Give a special Passover gift today and help protect the people of Israel. Call 888-488-IFCJ. That's 888-488-4325. Or you can go online to supportifcj.org. It's one word. It's supportifcj.org. Now stay tuned. We've got more coming up. We know that the president is very into making sure he's communicating with the people, that the people are seeing the active presence in the government. And do you think that there is a balance that needs to be struck? Because you have Alina Habba out on the streets, you've got Kristi Noem out on the streets. And honestly, that's a question I had for you too. What is your opinion of that? Because you've got the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security out there going in and she's leading the raid, but she hasn't gone through the academy. I mean, she's not a trained law enforcement official. Is that dangerous? Does the same thing apply there? And I hadn't thought about this until you said this to me, but I'm like, man, if you are out of the office, is somebody doing stuff behind your back? And is that the best place for you to be?
No, it's all like, you got to understand the morale was so pulverized beginning. I mean, you can go way back if you want. I mean, I've talked to many people back even in the Obama administration that could not get hired because, however they answered their questions and their political views were kind of understood that they were pushed off and their resume was dropped in the drawer and never to be seen again. And so, that took place over a long time. And the idea now that what we need is to rebuild that morale, I get it. I approve that. That's good. But to what degree are you willing to sacrifice the operational requirements against the rot, right? The deep state, the blob, whatever you want to talk about it, these people that are connected to, whatever power or financial aspirations they're having, you got to focus there first. With Kristi Noem, I understand what she's doing, but the photograph the other day where she's holding the gun incorrectly, that blew up on X, man. And every single operator I knew, didn't know, follow, are just pulverizing like, hey, stop what you're doing and get in the building. That's where you need to be. Even the bus, like, God bless, Cash and Pam Bondi, and, they're trying to say, hey, look, we're fighting against criminals. We're fighting the war. We're doing what we need to do. That big $500 million bus down in Florida. I get it, but man, let your deputies get in front, show a different face. We've seen your face. Promote the other people that are loyal to you. Let them do that type of thing. And we need those people in the office, in those places, to figure out what's happened and how do we fix those solutions.
Well, I thought it was, really, I hadn't thought about what you were saying until you said it. And then it started to strike me like, if the person is out of the office, who is kind of plotting against them? And I know that sounds crazy, but that is how these agencies, how many people work, because they are trying, there are ladder climbers, there are people that are angry, there's just, it's not like a business. It's not necessarily the case that everybody's kind of working toward the same goal. There are people with their own personal goals, right? So you have to sort of have eyes in the back of your head to see what's going on. And I've just noticed that in the last week, we've had these attacks. Well, in the last few weeks, you had the attacks against Pete Hegseth saying, oh, he let somebody into this chat. He's not, it's just like kind of picking away at his character as a leader. And then there was a big expose on DHS and who's involved there. And you just made me think, to me, those things are like, oh, that's just a hit piece, just an article. And then as you're saying this, I'm like, gosh, what if the stuff does add up and that's how they boot these people out and that destroys the whole movement? And I mean, maybe that's an extreme view, but you do have me thinking.
No, it's not extreme at all. That's what they want everybody to believe, is that when you go out and you get on your show or I'm on my show or whoever it is, and we start pointing this stuff out, they label us as extremists or conspiratorial or whatever. And that's always my favorite thing. The people who invented the term conspiracy theorists are the ones who call you a conspiracist, right? So for me, what do? Is I look at if I go in and I work with a sports team or I work with a business, and, the first thing I do is I always say, all right, how does your command structure look? Where do we, let's start there. And then what type of training do you have? And it's the operational execution. How does it work? How does the organization function, right? How do the directives or the policy get made? How do they become, they're a derivative of Congress or law or the president's executive orders? And then how do you execute those down the whole chain of command? And then how do you make sure that the orders are being followed? And then what is the reaction if the orders aren't, And so we're sitting here focused on some reservists who didn't want to put up the president's picture as a main news story. And that's intentional too. So, and this is tradecraft 101, right? And I think another awesome component of Mike Benz is he teaches us how this works. So, I worked for the Central Intelligence Agency for a little while, just a blip, a little bit of time, but I got enough time in to realize this is how it works. So if you want to change the opinion, how do you do it? You plant information that begins to challenge what the cultural narrative is, which traditionally is a cultural narrative based on, long-term behavioral patterns. And then you attack that, right? And then all of a sudden people start to go, oh, well, that must be true because the experts are saying it. And then once it's somehow locked into the social consciousness, they come in and say, see, this is real. This is the deal. This is what's going on. This is a big thing. These people are incompetent. We need to get rid of them, which then gives the people the people around Caesar, gives them the go ahead or the green light to go start attacking. And what better way to attack? You pull away the people who are most loyal. You isolate the person who's at the top, and then, et tu, Brute, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that people forget that you're dealing with essentially professional mind benders. I mean, that's what they have been trained to do, is to bend your mind the way they want you to think. And this is what you go in there and you're working with these people, and you have to understand that. But the political world is so twisted compared to the regular world. I mean, just this week, I will say I've watched when we ran a race here in Michigan, and then you have people. When I ran, I've told the story before. When I first started, people said to me, pick the 10 people that are closest to you. By the end of the campaign, you might have 5. And I remember thinking, that's a terrible thing to say. And then at the end of the campaign, I think I was like, okay, there's about 3 people I trust left in the world. Because you really do have people just do terrible things, and they lie right to your face, and they manipulate. And these are not trained people. So that's why I think about the people on the level of campaigning and state levels kind of stuff that are not trained to manipulate people's minds. And they're bad enough. I mean, this week, I will say, this just cracks me up, because there's a woman here in the state of Michigan, and she sends me, I put out a statement, I was looking at the Senate race and the governor's race, and she sends me this tweet, or she sends me a text with a screenshot of my announcement. And she said, I'm so excited. Can't wait. Like, totally support you. And then, can I work for you? I have this organization that does this, and I want to work for your campaign. And then yesterday, someone goes out and tweets about me and says, she shouldn't be running for one of these offices. And she openly comments on Twitter, yes, all she cares about is getting her face out there, something like she's a, media whore or something. And I'm like, do you think I can't see? But these are people who reach out to you, tell you, I love you, I support you, I want to help you. And they actually hate you. I mean, you really don't know who to trust in this world. There's no one loyal. Very few.
Yes, very few, because there are people, but you have to think about how do we build those bonds to where we can trust somebody? And then the biggest thing is, once people get a taste, right, a little bit of taste of what is it, a validation of how important they are, a validation of, how they learn how to play the game. And then they're like, oh man, this feels good. And, maybe someday I can be a chief of staff. And then someday I can find myself at the Pentagon or at the agency or wherever their aspiration is, or next to the governor, or better even yet, maybe I can run for governor or run for this. And what happens is that what that desire overwhelms our sense of morality. It's the oldest thing in the human condition is, how easily can be manipulated, right? The greatest lie ever told was the devil convincing you it didn't exist. And that evil is out there. So yeah, the hardest thing when you are aspiring to make real change is to stay true to that belief, and then to have the appropriate fighters around you that can withstand the storm with you.
Mm-hmm.
That, and it's very difficult. I commend you in every different way. I mean, watching you go up against, Whitmer was one of my favorite races to follow and pay attention to, but you were up against something, and, proof positive. We just saw a couple of weeks ago, that those guys who came up with the kidnapping case, right, their appeal was shot down pretty unanimously. And even after we learned that, out of the 12 people that supported, like most of them were FBI paid informants or worked for the Bureau themselves. I mean, and you're just like, wait, what? How? This is the Machiavellian level that is considered the standard operating procedure in politics.
We've got more with David Rutherford coming up next. First, let me tell you about my partners at Preborn. As we celebrate this holy season, let's take a moment to reflect on God's creation, you. In Psalms, we learn that God knit you together in your mother's womb. His eyes saw your unformed body. He saw who you were created to be before you became you. Preborn Ministries wants to remind you that each one of you is made in the image of God, and life is sacred. Life is eternal. You may have come to Earth as an unplanned pregnancy, but whether you were planned or unplanned, your life has value, and every day your life is ordained by God. Please take a moment to thank God for life, and we invite you to remember babies in their mother's wombs. Their lives count too. And last year alone, Preborn's network of clinics rescued over 67,000 babies from abortion. Your tax-deductible donation of $28 sponsors one ultrasound and doubles a baby's chance at life. How many babies can you save? Please donate your best gift today. Just dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby, or go to preborn.com/Dixon. That's preborn.com/Dixon. This is sponsored by Preborn. Again, that's preborn.com/Dixon. Stay tuned for more after this. There are no good results from Gretchen Whitmer and what she's done in the state of Michigan. And I say that in all seriousness. I mean, the numbers don't lie. The schools are terrible. The jobs have left. There have been tens of thousands of jobs lost under her leadership, if we can even call it that. The energy grid is a disaster. I mean, you can go through measure after measure of what a governor should be taking care of, and she's failed at every one, and yet she's on every list for them to nominate as president or as their presidential candidate in 28. I mean, how bizarre is that?
No, that's the standard, right? I mean, my favorite one recently, and this is one that this proves the sheer level of what of it. It's a form of cognitive dissonance, but it's even bigger. It's sociopathic in nature, really. I think was when we watched, Western LA burn to the ground. And for years and years and years, all the signs that this was coming, even there was a warning the week before. You've got the mayor over in Uganda or wherever she was. You've got Newsom out of pocket or whatever it is. The place burns down. A month or two later, he starts a podcast and he has Charlie Kirk and Steve O'Bannon as his first two people on the show. And he's like, hey, I'm actually center.
Yeah, I know. Again, why does our side even let that happen? Because it gives him this weird win.
I don't think it does. I think the American public is much smarter than everybody gives them credit for. I believe what you saw, you had this tremendous shift towards Trump. And these people are not Trumpers. They're not MAGA diehards. They're not in, what the left calls the MAGA cult. They're not in that. What they were is they're like, we're sick of the lies. We're sick of being gaslit. We're sick of what they're trying to spew to us of the old guard media, right? The senior citizens of media, I like to call them. And, they know it's a lie. So now they're pivoting to find their information on different places and different programs. And that's why, our media now is thriving and podcast is thriving, and these independent voices like yourself, who was in the fight, saw the intense storm, that the lies and how they attacked you and every other aspect. Well, you can speak truth to that to people, and that's where people are gravitating towards. All I do is, and you don't have to believe me, but you just have to believe the numbers, right? Numbers don't lie, math doesn't lie. And so what is Joe Rogan? It's something like 67 million unique downloads per month. What's Sean Ryan? My best friend. Sean Ryan's show does 32, 34 million downloads per month. Those numbers are so beyond what the old guard is doing. That scares the hell out of them. So what are they willing to do? They're willing to whip up their base into a frenzy that now we're seeing people burning down Teslas and attacking people. And like, it's, you have to stoke the fear in order to make the lie seem real.
Right. All right. Well, so you're part of this new media. So tell everybody how they listen to your show, or can they watch the show? Tell us everything about it.
For sure. My whole intention was, and for, I've been in podcasting since 2013. I started with a live online show called Navy SEAL Radio, which I do live every Saturday. It was a lot of fun. And then had the incredible blessing to my friend Marcus Luttrell reached out and said, hey, let's do a show. And I was part of the Team Never Quit podcast. And, in 2016, after 6 months, we were actually nominated by iTunes as one of the top 30 podcasts of the year that year. In the 3 years I was a part of it, I think we amassed something like 20 million downloads. We were one of the biggest shows in the world. Because of some family personal things, I left the show to be home more. I met my new wife and had 4 daughters, and I was like, I can't commit at that level. So then I launched the Frog Logic podcast, did that for several years. 2020, I was essentially canceled, even though I was always motivational my whole life. I hated to be open about my politics or to call people out. But then after that, it kind of, I'm not going to say it radicalized me, but it made me recognize that, the stuff that I used to do in my old life, right, when I carried a gun for a living, it seemed like that was being done to the American public on many different levels. And it's been proven in so many different explicit points that were as egregious as anything that I'd ever seen. And so after I kind of got myself back together, my business had collapsed, everything was over. I kind of got back, got my generating enough revenue to support my family. And just a couple months ago is when Buck reached out and was like, hey, brother, hey, you got any interest of getting back behind the mic? And I jumped at it, boy. I was so excited to, as to be a part of their network and how, the impact that those men have, and to work for Premier is just, it's such a blessing. And so my idea is that I just want to bring a little bit of common sense to a tsunami of information so that I can kind of consolidate and help contextualize the information that's going to protect people against that onslaught by that negative insurgencies, those nefarious forces that are trying to convince people something that's not true is true, to get whatever ends necessary, do whatever they have to do. And so that's the whole pretense behind the David Rutherford Show. You can find me everywhere on audio, Apple, Spotify, the iHeart Network. You can find video on YouTube, Rumble. We've got a Patreon account. If you go on all social media, X, Instagram, TikTok, it's David Rutherford Show, at David Rutherford Show. And then on X, it's D Rutherford Show. And then if you want to follow me, it's at Team Frog Logic.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for being on today. It was awesome to talk to you.
Well, listen, what you got to do for me is you just got to promise now that I can get you on my show,
Of
and
course.
we can dig into how you're going to fight this thing this next time out, because that's what I want to know.
Of course. Of course. Well, and I want to say thank you to everybody listening. And you made me think. I always tell people you can download on iHeart, on Apple, you go to the TudorDixonPodcast.com. But I never tell people that you can actually watch it on Rumble too. So we put our show out there on Rumble. If you want to see the show at any time, you can check it out on Rumble. We are there. Every episode is there. So I appreciate having you on today, and I appreciate all of our listeners. Thank you all so much. Have a blessed day.